All right, well, I think we'll get started. A couple more people still trickling in so they can join as I am introducing our presenter today, Dr. Bo Dabbs. So my name is Ken Archer. I'm the VP of Product at Upwave. I'm here with Jim Warner, our Chief Technology Officer. And this is the launch of an exciting white paper that reflects some groundbreaking research that Upwave's data science team has done. So what is this about? Well, life is about trade-offs, right? So I can buy my kid for Christmas an iPhone 12 or an Xbox, and because I'm only going to buy one. And the same dynamic is actually behind what many have called the holy grail of ad measurement, which is how to make the trade-off between brand advertising on the one hand and direct response advertising, and if you're in CPG, distribution investments on the other. Being able to attach a dollar figure to your brand investments, your brand advertising investments, is really the missing link here, understanding the relationship between brand advertising and sales. It's probably the number one question that Upwave and other ad measurement companies get from CMOs, is how to tie these two together. So our data science team has come up with some really exciting innovations in this area that you will see in Upwave's platform in the near to medium term future. For now, it's manifested itself in this really interesting white paper that reflects the research that they have done that Bo will be presenting today. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Bo.
Thanks, Ken. So as Ken said, today we're going to talk about a white paper that we think will help advertisers better understand the ROI of brand campaigns. Unfortunately, traditional attribution methods for brand campaigns can be inaccurate and frequently undervalue the impact of brand campaigns. So the key question is, how can brands and media partners justify campaign spending trade-offs? These trade-off decisions are always being made in brand advertising, where every dollar spent on a brand campaign is a dollar not spent on direct response or on new distribution channels. So how do brands justify those decisions? While we can confidently measure the sales impact of investments in direct response and distribution, there is still one huge unanswered question across the industry. What is the revenue impact of brand advertising? Many brands and their campaign partners attempt to capture this metric through direct response style analyses, but this methodology offers cloudy insights at best. So a typical direct response style attribution method will try to track exposed respondents during the campaign and assign credit based on conversions tracked during the campaign. The first problem with this method is that the conversion signal will be weak because you won't be able to capture all conversions. For example, if someone makes a purchase while they're logged into a different account or they're out of household, you will not always be able to capture the conversion. The second problem is that it only gives credit for near-term purchases, which isn't the purpose of a brand campaign in the first place. The goal of a brand campaign is to create a solid base for a brand to convert on in the future. The hope is that if a brand campaign can convince someone to consider a brand today, then you'll be able to convert them in a month or a year later when they're making purchases within the category. And finally, I think the biggest problem with this method is that it's not a causal method because it only looks at exposed consumers. In order to measure any causal effect, you must compare outcomes among both exposed and non-exposed consumers. So at Upwave, we've developed a methodology that avoids the pitfalls of traditional attribution methods. So we begin by obtaining attitudinal path to purchase data from both customers and non-customers for a brand. We categorize respondents into one of four tiers: unaware, consumers who have not yet heard of the brand; aware, consumers who are aware of the brand but wouldn't consider purchasing from the brand; consider, consumers who are willing to consider a brand; and purchase intent, consumers who say they are most likely to purchase from the brand the next time they make a purchase in the category. We then measure the percent of consumers in each tier who are existing customers of the brand. Then the value of moving a customer down the path to purchase funnel, say from aware to consider, is the increase in probability of being customer from tier to tier. We combine this value of moving consumers down the path to purchase funnel with brand lift metrics for the brand campaign. We can then measure the impact of the brand campaign on customer likelihood. So there are a few things to note about this method. First, the value of moving a person from one stage to the next can vary between stages and brands. And typically, brand campaigns will have the highest long-term impact by targeting the funnel stages with the highest increase in customer likelihood. Then we can combine estimates of lift in customer likelihood with reach data for the campaign to calculate the ROI of the campaign. So I think the best way to understand this method is to consider some examples. So today I'm going to talk about 2 example CTV campaigns that we measured at Upwave. The first is measurement for a brand campaign for a faucet brand. When we begin by looking at the customer probability column, so that's the one we have on the left, which gives us the percentage of consumers in each funnel stage who have made purchases from the brand. So for this campaign, among consumers who were only aware of the brand, 4% of them actually were customers. Then among consumers who would consider the brand, 10% were customers, and among those who intended to purchase from the brand, 30% were customers. Then we take the differences between the customer probabilities to get a lift in customer probability by funnel stage. So that's the second column. This shows that moving consumers from unaware to aware, or aware to consider, both give small increases in customer probability of 4% and 6% respectively, but the biggest increase for this brand is in moving consumers to purchase intent, which sees an increase of 20%. And so how should you think about this 20% increase? It means if you took 100 people who would consider the brand, you would expect 10 of them to purchase from the brand at some point. If you took another 100 people who intend to purchase from the brand, we would expect 30 of them to purchase from the brand. So if you can move 100 people from consider to purchase intent, you would expect to create the opportunity for 20 new customers. So here, I will note that we are not saying that if you were to stop all other advertising efforts, like direct response or in-person campaigns, you would be guaranteed to convert those 20 new customers. Brand campaigns are all about building opportunities. And we're saying that if you keep your other advertising efforts the same, we'd expect you to convert 20 more of those 100 people if you can move them from consideration to purchase intent. So now that we know the relative impact of moving someone from consideration to purchase intent on customer probability, to get the causal impact of the brand campaign, we overlay this data with the causal lift data from Upwave's brand measurement. So these brand lift values that we have here are estimated using Upwave's exposed control methodology that estimates the causal impact of a brand campaign on each brand KPI. Thus, we can confidently say for this campaign that we saw 2.65 percentage points of lift in awareness. And for each of those 2.65% of people, we expect 4% of them to turn into customers, of which 0% would have become customers before. This means we've generated 0.11% lift in customers. We can do similar calculations for each stage of the funnel and roll up these customer lifts to get the total customer lift generated by the brand. We can also estimate the number of additional customers created by multiplying this 0.63% lift in customers by the total number of consumers exposed to the campaign or the reach of the campaign. If we want to get ROI, if we then multiply the additional customers by lifetime value of a customer, you can get a return for the campaign. And so in this case, the return of the campaign was estimated at $4.3 million. So the second brand we're going to talk about demonstrates how the change in customer probability across funnel stages can vary across different brands and categories. For this example, we did measurement for a coffee creamer brand campaign. And again, we begin by measuring the customer probability for each stage of the purchase funnel, and then estimate the impact of moving consumers between each stage of the purchase funnel. So the interesting thing to notice here is that the largest increase in customer probability doesn't come from moving consumers from consider to purchase intent, but moving customers to consider from aware. And so while this may seem surprising at first, it makes sense given the category of the brand. Coffee creamer is something that is purchased often, and many consumers likely purchase a variety of different coffee creamer brands. So if you can move a consumer to consider the brand, they're likely to purchase the brand in the future, even if it's not the brand that they indicate they are most likely to purchase. And so if we look at the brand lift metrics for this campaign, we see that the brand was able to make large gains, particularly in consideration. And this led to a large amount of customer lift. So using a lifetime value of $190 for a coffee creamer customer, this campaign was estimated to have a return of $6.5 million. So they were able to get a larger return because they were able to make lifts in the spot that was going to give them the most return on customer lift. So I think if you have one takeaway from today's talk, it should be that traditional attribution methods for direct response campaigns simply don't work for brand campaigns. And frequently, those methods are going to underestimate the impact of brand campaigns. You can better understand the impact of brand campaigns by understanding how likelihood of being a customer increases as a consumer moves down the purchase funnel. Maximizing the impact of brand campaigns on customer lift can then be done by targeting funnel stages with the highest increase in customer likelihood. Then, by overlaying customer lift on the reach of a campaign, it's possible to calculate ROI for brand campaigns without the limitations of legacy attribution methods. So thanks everyone for attending. I hope you all learned something new today, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the audience. Back to you, Ken.
Thanks for that presentation. Yeah, if folks want to submit questions in the Q&A, we'll start with one question, which is, does this mean that one campaign that actually drove lower overall brand lift could actually drive more sales, more revenue than another campaign that drove higher brand lift?
That's definitely possible. So, for example, something that would come up a lot of the time is that moving a customer from aware to consider is probably going to be more valuable than moving someone from unaware to aware. Yeah. So if consideration is twice as valuable, it's possible if you have, say, 1%, I guess 3% lift in awareness and 1% lift in consideration, that would actually be worse than 1% awareness and 2% consideration, because consideration is much more valuable, but it's going to vary from brand to brand.
Right. Another question is, how can I calculate these metrics in my Upwave dashboard? So these are
that's coming soon. So first you need some estimate of whether or not someone is a customer. And so we gather that data self-reported for some campaigns, and we're looking into other ways to information about whether or not someone, but once you have that information, it'll be a little bit complex, but we'll add it for you in the near future.
Yeah. Another question. Can you go through again how you calculate purchase probability for each funnel stage specific to a brand?
Sure. So what we're essentially doing is we're doing a random sample of the population so that we have a representative set of customers and non-customers. And then once we have that group, we categorize people into the purchase funnel stages. And then for each stage, we look at what % of that stage are customers of the brand. So this could either be self-reported or from sort of first-party data, if you have first-party data on purchasers.
Right. So you look at people who are not aware of the brand, people who are aware of the brand, but it's not in their consideration set, people who are considerers of the brand, but don't intend to purchase from that brand, and then those who have purchase intent for the brand, and then the percentage of each of those four that are current users or purchasers of the brand. And then it's critical to then get that, from a census rep sample of the population. Let's see, another question is, so is this methodology saying that direct response campaigns should get less credit or shouldn't get credit for conversions, for sales?
We're definitely not saying they shouldn't get any credit. It's possible that a brand campaign sort of set the stage for a direct response campaign to be successful. So I think both should get some credit. So the brand campaign gets credit for moving someone into that purchase intent condition, and then maybe that primes them so that when they see a direct response campaign, they're more likely to actually sort of click the link and go purchase the product.
Yeah. Yeah. you've done this research across hundreds of brands. Are there some categories that, where doing this direct response approach um, to measuring brand lift in particular undervalues?
It would be particular undervaluing things like maybe a faucet brand or a car brand, something that's not purchased frequently, because you're just not going to see a purchase sort of in the window of the campaign or even right after the campaign. You might have to wait quite a while for a person to actually make the purchase.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, those are the questions that have come in. The white paper is available for download on upwave.com. You can also always reach out to your Upwave account exec, and they can send you the white paper. And with that, well, let's see if we have another question. We have one more question. It just came in. So multi-touch attribution models, Bo, have been criticized for duplicating credit across touch points, right? So you end up with more than 100%. Is this a risk for taking this customer lift approach to doing brand MTA?
I think there's maybe a little bit of risk of that. The real issue is just that we don't have access to that direct response data. So if we had access to all the data, we could try to figure out sort of how much credit goes to each part. So I really think of it as sort of the brand campaign is setting the stage. And so really the brand campaign is give you an opportunity to make maybe $100 sale, a $200 sale sometime in the future. And so you definitely have to split up the credit somewhat to say, would this person have made that purchase if they hadn't seen the brand campaign? And maybe the answer is no, but also maybe they did need that direct response campaign to push them over the edge. But that's hard to assess if you can't observe both, right? You need to sort of have access to the data for the brand campaign and the direct response campaign to split it up in an accurate way.
Yep. Yep. All right. So with that, we will wrap it up, and want to put in a plug for our next webinar in January on how accurate should your targeting be. Upwave has recently started showing targeting verification, and it raises questions. If you have a publisher or a data partner that is showing a 20% on target accuracy, well, is that good or is that not good? Bo's data science team has done some really interesting research, producing some norms specific to this area. That'll be really fascinating. So talk to you then, and thanks for joining.